Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, files to run in 2024. What a news cycle this has been. Holy smokers, this ain't no joke, okay? I'm sure everybody might have seen the news, or maybe this is the first time you're seeing this news. I want to talk about kind of my thoughts on this, what this means for the stock market, what this means for 2024. Is the market going to get excited about this, not excited about this, and kind of share all my opinions as far as that goes. And I think this is important. And, if you're thinking about who was a major ally definitely to the stock market, people can have a lot of opinions on Donald Trump if he did a good job or bad job as president. I'm not here to debate that. But one thing I will tell you is obviously Trump was definitely good for the stock market if you just look at kind of the facts and the numbers that kind of happened under him while he was president and whatnot, okay? So a lot to talk about here. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Definitely a little bit of a different video. Now, the initial reaction is the futures are down, not in a substantial way, but the futures are all down as of right now. We'll talk about, what all this means in the short term in just a moment here, okay? Now, the first thing you got to understand, if you weren't really in the financial markets back then, or you weren't let's say super tied in, is Trump in 2018 actually directly attacked Jerome Powell back then. And he did not like that. Basically, Chairman Powell was starting to raise interest rates back then. And Trump said things like, hey, Obama had 0% interest rates. Why do I have to, have these interest rates work against me? Which is that's definitely like a belief if you're somebody in office, right? And you're like, hey, my predecessor, they had rates at this. And now, you put me in this much tougher situation, because obviously the higher interest rates are generally what it means is the harder economic growth is going to become, right? The harder economic growth is going to be able to become, the more probable you're going to have a recession. The more probable you're going to have a recession, the more likely you're going to be voted out of office, right? And that was obviously Trump's first term there. So he kind of broke a little bit of a history there, because this is important for everybody to understand how this usually works. Usually, the sitting president tries to not comment at all about whatever the Fed chairman is doing. And this kind of broke that trend where, Trump was just very, very unhappy about this and publicly stated it. Trump said, maybe I regret nominating Powell. Asked if he regrets nominating Jerome Powell to the Fed chairmanship, Trump told the Journal, too early to tell, but maybe. Powell has said neither nor the Fed officials are letting Trump's frequent complaints affect them. And obviously Powell said, my focus is to control on the, what I can control essentially, right? And I think this matters in a significant way because, whether the Fed was influenced by Trump or not, it definitely at least seemed like maybe he got to them at some point in time based upon what started to happen with the Fed funds rate, especially after he really kind of came down on them. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden the Fed flipped very shortly after. Here's what was going on. Basically, the Fed was raising interest rates just very, very slowly, okay? Not like the insane, straight up like we've had this year. They were just kind of slowly raising interest rates throughout, 2017 into 2018. And right around here, the market starts to break, and I'll show you guys exactly what happened there. And, Trump really came out against the Fed, and next thing you know, Fed stopped. By January 2019, they weren't raising rates anymore. They were done. And obviously, rates came down in a massive, massive way because of Rona that happened there, right? So, whether we'll never know the truth. We'll never know if Trump did have an effect on what Jerome Powell and the Fed were up to or not, right? Maybe it's just coincidence that right after Trump, was coming down hard on them, they stopped raising rates, or maybe there was something more to that story, right? We'll never truly know the truth behind that whole situation. But what was going on in the stock market is things were starting to get very, very ugly. I got wrecked in this market, okay? At the end of 2018, I was getting wrecked, okay? Not as bad as 2022. This is a whole other level, okay? But I got hit hard. And the reason was, in a matter of 3 months, the NASDAQ went from 8,000 plus to a little over 6,000 in 3 months. And what you witnessed during that time is stocks got hammered, man. And, I understand, because of what we went through in 2022, now everybody, you have to, have a 70% drop or 80% drop for anybody to, even pay attention to it. But usually in the stock market, if big companies are falling, 15, 20, 25, 30% in terms of their stock prices in a matter of months, that's usually a massive deal. And that's what was happening in 2018. That's exactly what was happening. And the Fed was raising these interest rates. Trump was coming out against them and saying, you guys are reckless. This is ridiculous. And he kept kind of attacking several times. He attacked them publicly. Plus, I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors of him either potentially talking to folks or word getting around to the Fed what Trump's opinion was and his feelings and those sorts of things, just based upon what he said publicly. It was a lot, right? And so the market was absolutely obviously getting hammered. The Fed completely reversed its course, obviously, in January 2019, and up, and away we go. And the stock market has an incredible rally, right? And this is very important for everybody watching this. Why do you think the stock market's already started to rally over the past month, other than maybe Wall Street wanting year-end bonuses? The reason is, and this is the truth, okay? The reason is the market believes that the Fed is going to stop raising interest rates in December. I think that's becoming the belief out there now. And if that happens, Wall Street believes or is at least assuming a little bit that the market's going to go on a run like it went on in 2019. Because what we saw was January 2019, Fed stops raising interest rates and the stock market takes off. And so the assumption is here, the Fed raises one last time in December. That's what a lot of, definitely there's a segment of Wall Street that thinks that. And if that's true, then they believe that the market will, skyrocket after that. Now, I believe there's a whole host of other problems that could be coming in 2023 that sets us up very different than the scenario we had in 2019 that I think makes this much more of a scarier situation and a scarier outcome than we had. Because what I'll tell you during this time, we didn't really have true, real fears about housing. We didn't have real, true fears about massive layoffs. We didn't have the biggest companies in the world coming out and laying off massive employees while the market tanked. It was a scary time for the stock market. But you didn't hear Meta come out and announce they're going to lay off 10,000 or 11,000 employees. You didn't hear a situation where Amazon came out and said, we're laying off 10,000 plus employees, right? You didn't have that happening in the market at that particular time. You didn't have that happening at all, right? And so we're in a very, very different dynamic. And just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to necessarily happen again in the future. But Wall Street might be starting to draw little conclusions here and think this is the same exact situation that's going to happen here, okay? Now, what did the stock market do under Trump? Well, if we look at the data, what we're going to find is that NASDAQ went up roughly 150%, somewhere around there under Trump, okay? Which is a very impressive return. For being in office 4 years, it's a very, very impressive return. I can tell you if every president, for the rest of my life always gets 150% return in their 4 years in office, I'd be a pretty happy camper. That's pretty good. And an interesting thing about that is, all those tech stocks did tremendous, and the markets in general did very good, right? But tech stocks specifically did phenomenal during that time. And, you would have thought Trump didn't maybe like the tech companies, and honestly, I don't think he really did deep down. Maybe he got along with Apple, calling Tim Cook Tim Apple and things like that, right? I know he did not like Amazon. I know that for sure. I think him and Tesla have always been on kind of shaky waters, but also do keep in mind, Tesla wasn't really a major factor in terms of the stock market and the NASDAQ back then. And in terms of Google, in terms of Meta and those sorts of things, I think he might have had mixed feelings. But at the end of the day, tech stocks did phenomenal under Trump, just based upon the facts. And you also look at those, it's not just that stock prices went up. If you look at what happened to those companies' revenues, those companies' net incomes, those companies' margins, under, obviously, Trump, they did tremendous, to be quite frank. And that's not a debate. That's not a Republican or Democrat, statement. It's just literally the facts behind that, right? Now, under Biden so far, it's been, pretty tough sledding, nonetheless, in the financial markets, right? The NASDAQ so far is down roughly 13% under Biden so far. So down double-digit percentage now. He obviously still has time in office, so we'll see if things can turn around, but it's not off to a great start, right? Things were going good at first. No, also, it is important to remember there's a ton of different factors that go in. Obviously, we have the most aggressive Fed, since the 1970s that Biden's working through. So there's always going to be, I should say, positives and negatives when it comes to all this. And it's not just as simple as like, this guy's good, this guy's bad. It doesn't really work like that, right? But nonetheless, the numbers are the numbers at the end of the day, right? Now, this is extremely important for everybody to understand what happened here, okay? Because Trump gave the stock market one of the best gifts the stock market's ever been given, to be quite frank. And what Trump gave the stock market was corporate taxes at a substantially lower number. Basically, he set into motion the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it was called. And this took companies' corporate tax rates from 35% to 21%. So 14 percentage points lower. So naturally, this creates a dynamic where companies just are a lot more profitable, right? Which means they're going to be able to command likely a lot bigger valuations since the government's taking far less money. And not only that, but then think about it. Companies then have 14 percentage points more money that they can spend on either share buybacks, or they can spend that money on technology for their workforce. They can spend that money on hiring more employees. They can spend that money on expanding their businesses. They can use the excess money to buy other companies. So it creates a whole dynamic of like this kind of upward beautiful pressure there that lasts at least a few years, okay? And so there was a massive, epic thing to go through for the stock market. And I would almost guarantee, I guarantee you the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, all the indexes would not have had the performance they had under Trump if it wasn't for that tax cut. That was massive. Insanely massive. That's the biggest thing to happen for corporations in honestly the longest time. And in terms of that, right, it was the largest overhaul in the tax code in 3 decades. But it was the biggest thing to happen to corporations, in my lifetime, right? Certainly in my lifetime. And those are hard things to, I guess you can say, get back. Let's just put it that way, right? Now, the gentleman you're looking at right there, his name is Ron DeSantis, okay? Now, Ron DeSantis has all the hype and all the excitement in the Republican Party right now. And of my Republican friends, they are all have hopped over to the Ron DeSantis train recently. Let's just call it that. And I've even watched some of the media hop over to his kind of wave there as well, okay? And almost try to move past Trump and the Trump era, and they're moving to, in my opinion, the DeSantis era, which he hasn't officially, announced he's going to run for president, but things are looking like, more than likely he is going to, okay? And so donors, everybody across the board is hopping over to DeSantis now. And so this creates a very interesting dynamic between Ron DeSantis and Trump, okay? Because it's looking like these two gentlemen are going to end up going head to head, okay? Now, this matters in a significant way because we know Trump can definitely tear folks down. We know that, okay? If you watched him go through the Republican primaries years ago, he tore folks down and he wrecked them, okay? And wrecked their reputations and was, especially in debates and things like that, he was able to say certain things that just almost like ended a lot of, political, folks that were in that political party, their whole like wave, let's just call it that, and take that energy and put it toward him and what he was doing, right? And so if things get ugly between Trump and DeSantis, it can definitely hurt DeSantis in a massive way if he does run, if he does actually beat Trump. That could hurt him in the general election for sure. And Trump says he has stuff on DeSantis. Well, we don't know, right? But just that fear is a fear, right? And it's like, oh, what if he does have something on him and that looks really bad? And then obviously the Democrats will use that in the election. So there's a lot of folks in the Republican Party now that are talking and they're saying Trump might screw this whole thing up. We could likely have a walk-through easy presidential victory in 2024. But Trump might screw this whole thing up, okay? And that's definitely what's starting to go down in these circles, let's just call it that, on that side, where they're fearful that if Trump caused real damage, maybe folks wouldn't be as excited to go out there and vote for him specifically, right? And a lot of folks in the Republican Party are not happy with the election results that obviously came out of these midterms, and they're pointing the finger at Trump specifically, and they're saying this is your fault. Somebody in any situation where something doesn't work out, somebody takes a fall for that. And the person that's taken the fall for not being the epic red wave that people, that obviously Republicans wanted, who takes the blame? There's got to be always a head in the situation, and the person is Trump in that situation, right? That's just the way humans work. That's just the way life works. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, okay? Now, I can tell you, if it was DeSantis versus Biden, I think DeSantis would have a very good chance of winning that, okay? A very good chance of winning that. And that's even assuming the economy doesn't fall apart between now and in 2024 when it's election time, okay? That's assuming that. And I still think DeSantis would have a very good chance of winning. If Trump runs, obviously he's running, but let's say he wins, obviously, and it's Trump versus Biden. I think Trump has a decent chance of winning as well. I just think, obviously, they're going to bring up everything that negative that happened. They're going to keep, obviously, pointing out those things again and again and again. So I think it's an easier victory if Trump just got behind DeSantis and supported him and didn't tear him down. I think it would honestly be an easier kind of walk through victory for DeSantis in 2024, but that might not be how this whole game plays out. Now, the other thing I will say, okay, is regardless what happens in, whether it's Trump or DeSantis, Biden might have some big potential problems as far as the economy goes in 2023 and as you go into 2024. Basically, housing starting to fall off a cliff. Is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And housing is going to dry up in a massive way. There's going to be likely massive job losses in the housing field. There's going to be massive job losses in overall construction and in terms of, warehouses and just everything. Literally everything that you see under construction right now, it's going to likely dry up in 2023. And this is going to create a very bad dynamic for Biden going into the 2024 election, where likely there's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs lost by that point in time, never mind what's going to happen in manufacturing. And so I think that's a pretty likely probable situation that's going to happen. It's not a for sure. Maybe we skate through this whole thing, the Fed drops rates back down, and next thing you know, everybody's buying homes again and everybody's building new apartment communities and new projects. I don't think that's likely. I think the wheels are going to likely fall off a lot more in terms of the economy. And who takes the blame for that? If in the financial markets, we might understand like, hey, that's the Fed, is trying to kill the economy, and we understand that. But for the average folks out there, they look at whoever's in the presidential seat, and Biden will take the fault for that, and he will take the blame, and people will blame Biden for that. That's just a bottom line, because they look at whoever's in office, and even with inflation, right? Who's everybody look at for him? They'd say it's Biden's fault, right? That's just how it is. Like whoever's president gets blamed for all this stuff, regardless if it's, their predecessor's fault or their fault or the Fed's fault or anything like that. Whoever's in office at that particular time, specifically the president, they take the blame for that. And so that's the way everybody will look at it, right? Which creates a very tough, I would call it a very tough chance for, let's call Biden to win in that situation. Now, it's important to understand this, okay? In terms of the market's not going to move in any substantial way, positive or negative, anytime soon based upon whatever's going to happen in an election. That's so far away right now. Wall Street's focused on trying to get those year-end bonuses right now, okay? That's the full focus there. 2023 is going to be the full focus on trying to figure out, okay, are we going to have some sort of epic recession or not? And what's the Fed going to do? Are they going to stop raising interest rates in 2023? Are they going to cut interest rates? Or are they going to continue to raise interest rates? That's going to be full focus for 2023 and whatever happens there, okay? In 2024, that's when it's going to start to move to, how much is the Fed going to potentially help out the market likely? And that's when it's going to be, okay, what's going on with the election stuff? And is it going to be Trump or is it going to be likely DeSantis, right? And somebody could still come in that, but it looks like it's going to be those two, okay? And so is it going to be Trump or is it DeSantis? And then is it, who's going against Biden? Maybe Biden doesn't run. I think after kind of what happened in midterms, I think there's a decent probability Biden runs again. And that's when the market will start to really focus on that. For right now, it's not really going to care all that much, just to be quite frank, okay? Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, craziness going on out there. As always, much love. I appreciate everybody that subscribed to the channel, and let me know what your opinion is in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.